This morning, the chair for the licensing subcommittee is Councillor Eleanor Comley, and I will hand over to her now so she could perform the introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudette. Welcome everyone to this virtual licensing hearing this morning, and thank you to all the officers who have been working so hard to make this work. We are getting the hang of it, but just technical hitches can arise, so please be patient. You have the phone number. If you drop out of the meeting and you can't get back in, you can call and we'll try and sort that out for you. If we do need to stop the meeting while someone else is unable to rejoin, I just plead everyone's patience. In order to manage this meeting as a virtual meeting, we have made some changes to the way we handle questions. They won't really affect us today as we haven't got very many people in the meeting, but we'll guide you through those. I would also highlight that in a virtual meeting, it is much harder for people to focus on very long, complicated arguments, and you will find you lose your audience unless you keep things concise and clear. I'd like to now invite the members of the committee to introduce themselves. Councillor Massey.
Good morning, my name's Brenda Massey, I'm Councillor for Southmead.
And Councillor Shah.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Afzal Shah, I'm the Councillor for East Elwood.
And I'm Councillor Eleanor Combley, I'm Councillor for Bishopston and Ashley Down. Before I outline the procedure, can I ask, do any members of the committee have conflicts of interest that they wish to identify now?
Yes, Chair, if I can just declare an interest. I am currently involved as a student at the University of Bristol, but that doesn't mean that I have predetermined anything in respect of this planning application, and I will look at it with the evidence before me.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. So this is an informal and non-adversarial hearing, and all comments and questions should be directed through me as the chair. Our licensing officer and policy advisor, Sarah Flower, will introduce the report, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions for clarification. Then the applicant will be invited to present their application, or their representatives. We don't have any representative of the regulatory authorities attending, and there is no representation from the police. And I've also been advised that the relevant person who has made an objection has not been able to attend today, although she has sent a further email to the members of the committee. Can I just check, have all members of the committee seen the representation and the subsequent email? Yeah. Great. Then the applicant will be, the representative of the regulatory authorities, although she's not attending, she is available. We can call her in if the applicant has any questions about those conditions or that representation. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to sum up, and then the committee will retire for deliberation. If you have any technical questions, or for example, you can't hear, there is a chat function in Zoom which you can use. The chat function is not to be used for any content that is supposed to be part of the meeting, because it won't form part of the broadcast, so it can't be part of the public meeting. Just a last reminder that this meeting is being streamed to YouTube, so please be mindful that your image and participation in this meeting will be online for a number of weeks. Thank you. Sarah Flower, can I invite you to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Bear with me. Sorry about that. I was trying to find the correct document. Okay, we're here today to hear information on the grant of a premises license in respect of the University of Bristol, which is based at the ground floor Senate House in Bristol. All forms of advertising have been received and are compliant with the regulations. The application before you today is for the sale of alcohol Monday to Sunday from 12 p.m. until midnight. Also for plays, films, live music from 12 p.m. until midnight. Recorded music from 8 a.m. until midnight. Performance of dance from 12 until midnight, and late night refreshment from 11 p.m. until midnight. There have been 2 representations in respect of this application. One is from Regulatory Services, which the conditions have been proposed have all been agreed. And there is 1 outstanding representation from 1 relevant person, which we have also received points of clarification from, and also points of clarification have been received from the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I'd like to invite the applicant to present their application. Can we get Mr. Light unmuted?
Hello, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are now. Thank
Okay,
you.
good morning, everyone. We would also like to thank Bristol Council's team for facilitating today's meeting. We're very grateful for that. And could I just check, if I may, whether the committee has the summary of the conditions which were agreed with the responsible authorities?
Yes, I've received those. Have you both had those? Yeah.
Thank you. And also Appendix B, point for clarification you've mentioned, and also the email exchange with the responsible authorities saying that they were content for there not to be a hearing.
Can I just check, when was that sent, Claudette?
I'm just checking to see if that was one of the ones I sent this morning, Chair. But maybe held up in the system.
Chair, if I can confirm, we have received it.
You have received it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm very grateful. I mean, it simply says that my representation is not withdrawn, it's mitigated, and I'm happy to dispense with a hearing. So we've agreed conditions with the RAs and they're content. What we haven't seen is the subsequent email from the relevant person. I don't know if we need to see that.
Is that a question? Sarah, on a matter of principle, I didn't share that information with anyone other than the panel, the member panel, that email exchange.
I think as long as members have seen that email, we've
The members have seen it. I don't think it includes material that is not covered in the original objection that you would need to respond to.
Okay, that's
That
great.
would be my judgment. Is that reasonable?
Is there any way it can be put on screen, Sarah?
If you just give me 2 seconds, I can.
Are we all right to publish it in that way?
I would prefer if you didn't, unless you've taken out the email address and contact details for
the person. If
the person concerned.
I'm happy to, if you could read it out, that would be fine.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that actually, Roy, that Sarah reads out just the main substance of it.
Thank you.
My Outlook's just decided to crash, so
Okay.
just bear with me.
Okay.
And Lynn's gone to get a coffee.
I've got a copy here. Do you want me to read her email? So there was an email on Sunday evening on the 5th of July, Chair. Would you like me to read that one?
Yes. Do you want to sum it up, if you can?
it goes on. What she did is provide the committee with a copy of your letter from Burgess Salmon. I think that was Joanna Atwood's. And she was quoting where you said that the university takes responsibilities to its neighbours very seriously and endeavours to manage all of its licensed premises in a responsible way. And it said that the university recently disbanded the community liaison group that doesn't chime with the, or I think she meant doesn't show an intent, the right intent. That's what she's saying actually, about taking responsibility for your neighbours. So she's challenging that. And it says that you've offered conditions but made no mention of what those conditions were. She then goes on to say, and she references the noise obviously arising from the fact that there are students on your premises, because it is a university, and explaining why she's kept awake because of their activities. And then she comments on the campus and the residential areas. And her main concern is noise and disturbance, travelling. Is there anything else, Chair, I should mention? Because she does go on to discuss.
No, I think you've covered all the
the
main points there. Thank you, Claudette.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I'll carry on if I may, Chair.
Yes, please do.
Okay, you've got the details of the application, and bearing in mind the Chair's very wise comments that I shouldn't go on for too long, or nor should anybody else, I'll try to keep myself succinct. So you've seen what the premises are and what they're intending to do. And this application is for the lower ground floor, which is going to be used for students for food and drink. Predominantly, it's an eating, drinking venue used by students and used by staff. And as part of the University of Bristol's civic values to encourage members of the wider Bristol community onto the campus and into the buildings, other people will be invited to come into the university building. And that's an important part of what the University of Bristol wants to do. And you may be familiar with the Hawthorns Hotel, which is just across the road from these premises. And the Hawthorns Hotel is licensed, and the Hawthorns Hotel at the moment is performing, in terms of licensing, much the same function that these premises will perform. And its license is much the same as the license that these premises have. I'm told that we see a lot of customers from the general public, including families for breakfast before school and walking groups and tours throughout the day. So the public are using the Hawthorns Hotel, and no doubt will use this new facility and to be able to come and join in and make the university integrate into the local people's lives. So that's what's going to be happening there. Then as far as the representations are concerned, I'm not sure I need to say too much, because the main issue, or the only issue really, is noise. There are no representations from the police, as has been mentioned by the Chair. And the representation from the responsible authorities was concerning noise from the premises, mainly because there were a few issues that they wanted some clarification on. The first was what activities would be carried on in the premises. And the second was what use, if any, would be made of any external areas and where they are. So Joanna Atwood and Abby Holman were in negotiation and contact over this, and Abby Holman was very helpful and came up with some very good suggestions, and it was very positive dialogue with the responsible authorities. And there's now a suite of conditions which covers all of the issues which the responsible authorities raised, and they now have more information and know what's going to happen. One of the things they weren't sure about was what, if any, outside area would be used, because as is allowed by the regulations, it's not shown on the plan. And the condition now says that before any outside areas are used, 4 weeks before, we must inform the authorities what we're intending to do and see what advice they give us. So all of that is now cleared up. There's no issue there at all. Without wishing to underplay the representation from the relevant person, the relevant person does live some third of a mile away from these premises. And it's highly unlikely that any noise generated on these premises would travel that far and cause any problems for her where she lives. The other problem she raised, or the other concern she raised, was that people leaving these premises may wander away to go home, and she may be disturbed by them as they do that. Well, she lives halfway down a cul-de-sac, and it's not a through route to anywhere. You may be familiar, I won't mention addresses, but you may be familiar having seen the addresses. You may even done a Google Maps search, as did I, to see where it all is. And it doesn't seem that that will be an issue for her. It seems, perhaps reading between the lines of the representation, that there is an issue for her with noise from student accommodation, perhaps around the area, living in Clifton Redland. And therefore, that's why she's made the representation. It would have been very nice if we could have asked her that and she could have explained her position more fully to the committee, but we haven't got that opportunity for whatever reason. The premises aren't located in one of Bristol's cumulative impact areas. As you know, you have a number of cumulative impact areas in Bristol now, and it hasn't been thought necessary to designate this part of Bristol as a community impact area. And therefore, we're not looking at anything other than the standard guidance from the Secretary of State. And as mentioned in the questions that we sent back, there is guidance at 14.13, which does say that once away from the premises, the conduct of people who've been at the premises is for them to deal with. That's not saying the university has tried to abrogate any responsibility for this, but as far as the guidance is concerned, the two sections which are important are that one, and also the one which says at paragraph 812 that the main source of evidence for a committee is the responsible authorities' view of the application. And clearly the responsible authorities here have no problem with the application, provided that the conditions which have been agreed and which are happily taken on are utilised. So that will happen. Now, as far as the Hawthorns Hotel is concerned, having said that it's a similar sort of venue in terms of licensable activities to this, and the license is very similar to this in terms of hours and activities and so on, the plan is that once these premises are operational, and because of what's been going on with the coronavirus, etc., they are a bit behind schedule, but once these premises are operational, the plan is to convert the Hawthorns Hotel into a library facility. So actually what we're doing today is asking you to move the license across the road. And in doing that, we've had the benefit of advice and assistance from your responsible authorities, which have enabled us to put our license into the sort of form which everybody is happy with. And our submission basically is that we won't be undermining any of the licensing objectives, and it's only the noise licensing objective, which is the one which is causing concern at the moment. You may be familiar with the area. There isn't really any residential accommodation other than some student accommodation around that area. UWE's got its campus out at Frenchay, and Bristol University has grown up around the city with the Wills Building and Queen's Road Union Building. But I suppose this is part of the hub of the university. It's where the gymnasium is, it's where the library is, it's where various buildings are for different departments. And if you wander around there, you'll see most of the houses, the big houses around there are university houses. There's a church, they haven't made a representation. There's Bristol Grammar School, they haven't made a representation. And there are no other representations from anybody close by, just from the relevant person who's some distance away. So we would ask you to grant the license in the terms applied for, applying the conditions which were agreed with your responsible authorities. I think that's the application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Massey, do you have any questions?
Just one, I think, at the moment, which is, given that the issue in this case appears to be a comment about noise, would you be prepared to display a notice in the venue which would give a contact telephone number in case of any complaints?
I'll take instructions, but I'll look at the operations manager who's sitting just below you and see if he nods yes or no. He's nodding yes.
Good. Okay, thank you. I think that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shah, any questions?
No questions at this stage. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I had one which was really to ask about the surrender of the licence at the Hawthorns across the road. I can see that there would be operational difficulties in surrendering one before the other starts, and I wouldn't want to kind of hamper the business moving. But would you be willing to give an undertaking to surrender that licence once the new site is operational?
I haven't really discussed that because I think, as you quite rightly say, there are management issues and practicalities. And I was hesitant about making the point about the Hawthorns Hotel across the road because I didn't want to tie that in with this, and I didn't want this application to be granted conditional on that licence being surrendered. That's the plan, and no doubt that is what will happen. But I think technically it would be difficult to tie the two licenses together now. So you have a statement of intent from the university, and I would ask if perhaps that was sufficient for you, please, at the moment.
Thank you. Sarah, as policy advisor, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you, Chair.
And Lynn, as legal advisor, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
In which case, I'd like to invite the applicant to sum up.
Okay. Well, this is an application by the University of Bristol, which is a major employer in Bristol, which is a major asset to Bristol, which is bravely investing a huge amount of money in new facilities for students and for the general public also to use. And I would ask you to grant the licence, as there are no representations which give you any firm evidence that they would undermine the licensing objectives if the licence were granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Claudette, can I ask you to talk through the technicalities of going out and coming back in again?
I will, Chair.
Thank you.
So if it works beautifully now, I will ask shortly. Jane will put the applicant and the applicant's representative back in the waiting room. Chair, how long do you think we will be deliberating? Do you think it will be, it's 10:30 now.
Come back at 11, do you think?
11, yes, 11. So we will put you in the waiting room until 11 o'clock and we will deliberate. And then if we're going to go over 11, I will email you and say we're going over 11. But hopefully by 11, we'll be able to bring you back into the meeting. So I will ask Jane, our technical support, now to remove the parties to the application back into the waiting room, please. And if you could then, once you've done that, if you could then put us in the breakout room so the members of the committee can deliberate. Thank you very much. Lovely, thank you, Jane. And if you could please enable the breakout room.
You into the breakout room.
Thank you. And Amara, if you could put up the slide to say that we are deliberating. Thank you. Thank you. We're still broadcasting. Jane, I'm hoping you're still there. Thank you.
Ram.
Jane, could you admit everybody from the waiting room, please?
Sure, I'll do it now.
Thank you, Jane. Chair, I think everyone's assembled. Would you like to give the decision? Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience and welcome back. We have determined to grant the licence, subject to the operating schedule offered with the addition of all conditions that have been agreed with regulatory services, which in our view will promote the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective and address the concerns raised by the outstanding representation. We note that no objections were raised by the police concerning crime and disorder, and that no other representations have been received by residents living in the immediate vicinity of the premises. We have therefore concluded that to grant the licence with conditions as modified will not undermine any of the licensing objectives. Thank you all for your time today, and good luck.
Thank you. That concludes the meeting. Can I ask Jane to conclude the meeting, please?
So to end the meeting.
Yes, please.